Portugal is a place that really fascinates me. I think it's the incredible layers of history and all the things we're learning while we're travelling around this huge province of Alentejo. We've kind of focused in on the Romans so far, but there's so much more.
And this morning we've got a real treat. We're going megalithic, way back in time. This has been such a beautiful walk through a cork oak forest. Lots of birds. But now we've come to a clearing.
Wow, well, how to describe it? It's a huge stone circle with 80 or more egg-shaped standing stones, and it's called the Cromlech dos Almendres. Is that right? Mm-hmm. The Cromlech of almonds. I suppose they'd look a bit like almonds as well as eggs.
It's really quiet here, except for a few tourists who, like us, have come to check out these stones. This is known as Portugal's Stonehenge, but it's actually 2,000 years older than the famous British landmark. You can see carvings of circles and lines in the rocks.
This is one of Europe's largest and oldest prehistoric monuments. About 100 stones were found in the 1960s, and it's all aligned with the equinox, just like other megalithic tombs and, of course, Stonehenge.
And from up here on the hill, we can just about make out Évora, a hugely important town for thousands of years, from the Celts, through the Romans, the Moorish empires and Portugal's golden age. Today, Évora is a World Heritage City.
It's where we're heading this episode, with a rare chance to visit an ancient monastery with a modern-day connection to wine.
And to find out what one of Portugal's most well-known and expensive wines has to do with these standing stones and the granite boulders that scatter the surrounding fields. Isn't that a nice sound?
It's a great sound.
There it is. Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Anna and Al's Big Portuguese Wine Adventure. Today we're talking about green chartreuse, the rolling stones and a stairway to heaven.
The wine is called Pêra Manca, perhaps the biggest name from Alentejo, said to be on board explorer Pedro Álvares Cabral's ship when he landed in Brazil in the year 1500.
The winery is called Cartuxa, after an order of monks.
Bom dia.
So why don't we start at the monastery?
Tente ser muito breve, como pode ver, estamos a meio de uma reportagem.
In the car park of the Scala Coeli Monastery, our guide was immediately interrupted by someone passing by.
Está bem? Muito bem, obrigado. Oh my God, I'm gonna need therapy after this. I'm Andre.
Andre?
You can call me Johnny if that's easier for you. It's okay.
I think Andre's pretty easy.
You're Portuguese, right?
Eu sou metade portuguesa.
Which half?
It depends, it travels.
All right, I'm just gonna turn off the phone. Many people are trying to get inside of the monastery.
Oh, okay.
Because it's been closed for centuries and opened shortly, and it's going to be closed once again. This will have more privacy, right? So you're interested in everything, which is very specific.
We are, yeah. We're doing a podcast on wine, though. So
wine,
there's
yes.
The wine element.
So you came to the right place. There's probably 10 millions of euros in wine in here.
Wow, it's beautiful.
Yes, as you know, we keep the Peramanca, we storage the Peramanca, you've heard of it, of course,
Yeah.
underneath the monastery. That's because of water. It's not just to turn the history of the wine more romantic. The monastery has some characteristics that are very good to the wine to gain quality. The history of the Cartusian order is very, very long. It begins in 1084. Not even Portugal existed yet, but I'm not going to talk about 1084 when Saint Bruno founded the order in the Chartreuse Mountains in France. I'm going to, for the first moment, talk mostly about the 16th century when the Cartusian order has some expression here in Portugal.
So, Carthusian is an anglicization of Chartreusian. You might have heard of green chartreuse. It's strong, sticky booze my mum used to drink at Christmas.
The monks were given a secret recipe hundreds of years ago, and sales of the liqueur paid for monasteries around the world
or charter houses as they were known in Britain.
The Archbishop of Évora, cousin to the king, invited them to start a monastery here.
So we'll provide everything to install the monks here in the 16th century. And we'll stay in here until 1834. 1834 is a very dramatic year for Portugal.
It was when the dissolution of the monasteries happened here. After liberals won the Civil War and the monastic orders were disbanded, the monks expelled and the buildings were taken over by the state.
And according to art history student André, that wasn't good for the building.
The Portuguese state will turn this place into many different things, with many different functions that don't really belong to this space. It will be an agriculture school, a madhouse, am I saying right? I think so. Yes, a cork factory, many different uses in the monastery.
Hold on a second. In this really very beautiful marble building facade, there was a cork factory?
Yes.
That sounds like a bit of a waste, doesn't it?
But you'll be more surprised in the interior.
Okay.
They done terrible things. They were not nice. And you'll see it now.
Okay.
In the main chapel of the monastery. You know that Portugal was known a long time ago as the Empire of Gold.
Wow.
We had so much gold that the Spanish silver had more value than our gold. We only have 2 chapels like this in Portugal. Almost every one was destroyed, and here we are talking about the gold from Brazil, of course.
We're looking at a cathedral-sized wall filled with extremely minute woodwork.
And everything is coated
In gold.
in gold.
Golden leaf. But I have to admit that here, more interesting than the gold is the work on the wood. It's so detailed.
And lots of grapes.
A lot of grapes, yes, a lot of grapes. So wine still is the subject over here. And the Portuguese state used this place as a hen house with tons and tons of cereal. Luckily for us to be here today, we have a new character in our story in 1871. So the monastery will be bought by José Maria Eugênio de Almeida.
He was one of Portugal's richest men, and the building has been owned by the Eugênia de Almeida family and their foundation ever since.
José Maria died just a year after he bought the monastery, but his son had a theory that wine could save Alentejo's economy.
So the wine that will be produced with the grapes that are planted around the monastery will give birth to this wine that is very famous in Portugal today, Cartuxa. So it begins this relation between this family from Lisbon and the monastery and, of course, the Alentejo.
But it was the last heir, Vasco, the Count de Villalva, who had perhaps the largest impact.
He restored the monastery to its former glory, invited the Carthusian monks back about 50 years ago, and used the family's fortune to build a philanthropic foundation.
The name of this monastery, you probably have heard it, it's also the name of a wine, Scala Celli. I don't know if you're fans of Led Zeppelin. No, you don't like Led Zeppelin.
My daughter is.
Oh, your
sure.
daughter has a good taste.
Yes.
Well, you know probably the song Stairway to Heaven.
Yes.
Yes. Scala Celli means stairway to heaven. You have that stairway over here.
It's a ladder, isn't it?
Scala Celli.
It's a ladder cut into the marble.
Yes,
or
it's a
illustrated
stairway to heaven.
Yes.
Stairway to heaven, yeah.
With 7 steps. It's really a journey, a path that the monk is willing to do in order to achieve the sky. And that happens in the Ermitério. The Ermitério, it's the largest cloister of the Iberian Peninsula, and it's also the heart of the Cartusian monastery.
Okay, going inside.
So the monks came here in the 60s, in 1960, and the foundation began in 1962. Let's get inside. Ready?
Ready.
Ready.
It's the first time and probably the last one.
Yeah. Wow, okay.
There's a striking smell of orange blossom.
Please pay attention to sound. That's very, very important. When we talk about silence, we are not talking about the absence of sound. Quite the opposite. It may be a contradiction. We are talking about the silence that we can actually hear. And the sound, the silence is the birds singing, the trees dancing with the wind, and that's the vow of poverty in the Cartusian order. So the vow of poverty in the Cartusian order doesn't have to do with sacrifice, with punishment, but with the essential things of life. And the essential is this. So what they actually call poverty for the Cartusian monks is this. And it's not so bad, really, right?
This is all right.
Well, let's move ahead.
Okay. Wow, it is huge, isn't it? Beautiful.
So we have this notion, this gradual notion of subida,
Going up.
Going
to the
up in
sky.
height.
So
Elevation, yeah.
in a certain way, it's in symphony with the name Scala Coeli, Stairway to Heaven. Heaven, that is actually the only thing you can see from the exterior over here.
Okay, it's a bit earlier than usual, but how about we have a clink
And a think?
about Pêra Manca?
Pera comes from Pedra, meaning rock, so the best translation is probably rolling or wobbling stone.
It refers to the granite boulder fields around Évora and at the Cromlech dos Almendres.
Monasteries produced communion wine, and by 1500, Évora was famous for its Peramanca regional wines.
Which were apparently on board the Portuguese explorer Cabral's ship when he landed in Brazil that same year.
By the late 1800s, Peramanca was a world-famous fine wine, but it gradually drifted into obscurity until 1990.
When Cartuxa and the Eugenio de Almeida Foundation acquired the brand and reunited wine and religion.
So we are walking just right now on top of Peramanca.
Over the wine cellar.
Yes, so underneath the floor, well, let's see if it breaks.
Let's hope not.
Underneath the floor, there's all the Peramanca that goes to the whole world.
Wonderful.
So you can see why we keep it in here. The water makes the temperature stable the whole year.
A cloister filled by a deep lake helps keep the cellar below cool.
And you also have guardfish.
Yes, it's a small fish, but the Cartusian monks put it in here, so they're very, very big. The Peramanca has a period in bottle, and that period is inside of this monastery, hearing the monks singing.
Just standing here and knowing that these bottles are resting in this gorgeous...
When you open a bottle of Peramanca,
Yeah.
it's more than a wine. It has centuries of history. There's a lot of soul in the wines of the foundation. There's a very interesting story.
It's just a short walk from the monastery to the walled gates of Évora, one of the most visited towns in Alentejo.
It's a UNESCO World Heritage City for many different reasons, and this in front of us is one of them.
This Roman temple is perhaps the most well-known monument. It dates back to the time when Julius Caesar conquered this area.
It has 14 now crumbling columns. This isn't the original structure. It was built in the late 1800s, but archaeologists have pieced together the history from the ancient remnants used to build it.
There was a Roman city wall, but the one we see today was built in the 17th century during the Golden Age of Portugal, along with many beautiful churches and buildings.
It's also where the Wine Classification Board of Alentejo, known by its Portuguese acronym, the CVRA, chose for its headquarters.
They have an exhibition about the wines of Alentejo, their history, and they're just across the road from the temple.
Well, that is a kind of a showcase of the region, educational center of the wines of Alentejo in the middle of Évora, where you can learn about the history of the wine production in Alentejo, from the Phoenicians to the 21st century.
João Barroso is head of the Classification Board's Sustainability Programme. We'll delve into that later in the series, but he gave us some background on Alentejo wine and the work the centre does.
Alentejo wines, you have a plethora of them. You can either taste or buy, and have a bit of a good time in Évora and learn a bit of Alentejo wines.
We took the chance to ask a bit more about the Alentejo wine region and the kind of wines produced here.
It's a very diverse region because you have, the Atlantic Ocean on one side, you have the Iberian Plain on the other, you have all of this terroir that is very different, that obviously then produces very interesting wines of every sort. And in terms of cost benefit, it's probably one of the best wines in the world because generally they're very cheap wines with above average quality in the palate.
That's the experience that we have also seen, and it puzzles us that the wines really could charge much, much more for the quality that is produced here.
Yeah, but there's a problem there because, and this was something that probably still comes from the old fascist regime that we unfortunately had for too long, that kind of created this logic, almost cult, that the wine it's a part of the everyday life of the people of the country. It's part of the gastronomy, but it's also almost part of the diet. And so it's considered almost as a staple food, which is not. It's in fact a commodity, a deluxe commodity, if you really want to evaluate it in a very pragmatic way. So we go from having a country that takes wine as a habitué of the table, that should by default be cheap because it's almost like water, to having, wanting to sell it at very expensive prices. So one thing doesn't match with the other. It's against the laws of market to sell in the home at 1 but sell outside at 10. And so that does bring a bit of a problem.
The wine price problem is something Cartuxa gets around by producing a whole range of wines. Pêra Manca is popular at Christmas, particularly in Brazil, even if it costs hundreds of euros.
And so our next stop was their Monte de Pinheiros winery, where all the magic happens. And with 6 million bottles of wine produced every year, it's a big job for the winemakers to get the balance right between volume and quality.
So my name is Duarte Lopes, typical Portuguese name.
Duarte is one of the top winemakers at the Eugênia Almeida Foundation.
This is a Casito vineyard. We have around 400 hectares just around us. So
The foundation owns Cartuxa as well as the monastery.
So it's a foundation that was created by a very rich person from this area. So he created this foundation based on agriculture so that we can create jobs, but at the same time develop education, cultural things. So it's a very dynamic foundation in this helping area. But agriculture, it's the engine, it's where we generate the money. So more than 50% of our vineyards, it's about Trincadeira and Aragonês, so two very Portuguese varieties from this area. We need to start with the thing about wine in Portugal. So if you go and check the numbers, Portugal, it's very small, but it's the number one in wine consumption per capita in the world. So this tells us that wine, it's a product that it's consumed every day for lunch, for dinner. So the big thing was the improvement in quality, and that was a big jump 30 years ago for sure. And things really changed.
Obviously, we're fascinated by all the different 250 plus indigenous grapes there are in Portugal and the like. Is it a harder sell because people haven't heard of it?
10, 15 years ago, it was important to have some blends with Portuguese and non-Portuguese varieties so that people could get into the Portuguese wines. Today, I think it's in the opposite way. People are trying to discover new things from different places, and when you look at the wines and you look at the Cartuxa, you see something very traditional, but it's traditional always with technology on the inside, something like this, yeah. Gilmer knows this better than me, for sure.
So I'm Gilmer Grattan. I'm export manager for Cartuxa Wines. So my job is to educate the world about Portuguese wines, Portugal, and Cartuxa in general.
Well, it's a beautiful day. It's a blue sky, the sun is shining, but the wind is howling, and I can see everybody here is shivering except me because I'm from Newcastle. So why don't we get out of the wind and start the tour? Right, let's go inside.
Yeah.
Wow, faced immediately by barrels.
Rows and rows of barrels. Beautiful.
I think the more wine tourist area it's this one with these old barrels that actually they are full of wine. When we go to after that door, you will see it changes. We come from this more traditional Alentejo with the walls painted in white, and then we go to that side, everything changes. So it's like not a time machine, but something like that.
But it's kind of funny, you open up the different doors, it's just opening up to a different area, completely new view. But it's a big surprise behind each of these big doors. You have no idea what you're going to see.
I can't wait to get behind this green door.
Oh, wow.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
What do you describe? Well, it's the concrete walls that go up, I don't know, you can get 3 double-deckers buses on top of each other up there.
This must be more than 10 meters.
Yeah.
We are looking at a quite complex winery. If we look to all the wineries that we can find in the world, this one is, well, it's quite different because mainly we try to go after some small details in production. Last winter we picked something like 6.5 million kilos. We do something like 80%, it's hand-picked grapes, so it's a huge number. We have the winery number 1 that we focus on more premium wines, and then we have winery number 2 where we focus more on this more entry-level profile, so it's a faster and more efficient winery.
The second winery is more about size and scale of fermenting, moving the wine to tanks and then cleaning.
It's all stainless steel and built to be run by fewer people with greater efficiency.
And we're learning how winemakers each take a different approach to their trade.
One thing that you notice is we have many different shapes and different volume tanks. So the thing is, we do everything in the vineyard, and we work with around 25 different red varieties, more 20 white varieties, and we do everything separately by not just variety, but by block on the field. So at the end, you have everything after different fermentations, and then you can start to do some mixings, blendings, toppings, just looking at quality and potential for aging. So
one thing that strikes me is the old style of Portuguese winemaking was field blends, was having all the grapes mixed together, harvest them at the right time for everything to work. Whereas here you're doing exactly the opposite.
Yes.
You're taking everything separate and then putting the emphasis on your skill as a blender to perfect the exact wine that you want. It's a complete difference. Is that right?
we can say it's a more controlled way of doing things in this way. If you have a field blend, we know that not all the grapes achieve the maturity at the same time, the good level of maturity. So it's good for complexity, but it's not very good for consistency. So you need all these two things.
What an amazing winery, to be able to make one of the most expensive wines in one part and huge volumes of cheaper stuff in the other.
It's impressive how the winemakers can stay across all these things at the height of the harvest with so much going on and so many decisions to be made.
But after a tour of all things Cartuxa, I think we owed ourselves a chance to try a few of the wines and hear more about them from Gilmer.
Perhaps we'll try the Pêra Manca in a few seasons when we know more about wine and it won't be wasted on us. But for now, well, you can never visit too many wineries.
So we're at Quinta de Valdebon. It's just a beautiful view. You can see a little aqueduct here up on your left. There's some orange trees, there's some vines that are growing, some olive trees over there on the right.
Was this the original winery or vineyard or? Yeah.
Yes. So this is the original before the Monte Pinheiros was updated. So wine isn't made here anymore. It's just more of the touristic side to see how things go, how things were in the past. You have some tanks that aren't used, but you can see the traditional methods of making wine here.
Wow, so this is where it's a good chance for us to see all the wines that you've got.
Yes, so these are the wines. These are EA brands here. The regular reds, you got the bio, you got the rosés, the whites. So it's the entry-level Vigna.
EA is simply branded with the foundation's initials. It's around €5 or €6 a bottle.
They produce a wide range of wines from entry-level through Cartuxa-labelled wines up to Pêra Manca.
Our Talia, Vigna d'Italia, which we'll see the Talias here.
Talia wine
And this is a
again.
newer
As we've
concept
said,
here.
everybody's jumping on this trend to make Talia wines in clay amphorae the Roman way.
And then we go on to the Scalaccielli right here. So you see the ladder. So it's the same where we were, the Cartuxa
I've
Monastery.
never seen that before. Have you?
It's pretty
This
cool.
is a smaller production, and this is the 100% mono casta, the mono varietal of the Alentejo region grape.
From hearing about it, we slipped seamlessly into trying it. Trying a lot of the wines, actually.
So the first wine that we're trying is the EA White. So this is one of the most emblematic wines. You see, this is where people start off when they try Cartuxa wines. You'll see it at most grocery stores here in Portugal. This is the everyday, easy drinking, very fresh, aromatic, has a nice citrusy flavor to it, very crisp, easy to drink. This is one of those wines that you'll want on a hot day, especially in the Alentejo region. You'll have very hot days.
Hopefully this is one of the wines you might have been able to get hold of to drink along with us. It's very easy drinking. If you bought a Peramanca, good skills, and let us know what you thought.
Gilmer explained about their large range of wines.
I think you have different price points and you have different profiles that you're going after. So say somebody that is just learning about wine that wouldn't really appreciate the structure of a Peramanca or the profile of a Peramanca, somebody that's just learning about wine that likes the sweeter side, that is just starting out, say maybe in Portugal, 18 or so, would go to the EAs, and that's the type of customer that we're looking for, somebody that's young, somebody that's looking to try wines and looking to find their region or find their producer. And then we produce wines for every step of the way. So as you mature, you have more money to spend on wines. You have your flavor profiles change. You like a little bit more of the rustic, or you like a little bit more of the fuller bodied wines. You move up a scale. So you keep moving up and moving up. And so we kind of attract customers at all different levels of their wine experience. So from the beginner to the collector, of somebody that's looking for the best of the best, something that's only available in the certain years, that has the budget to appreciate that type of wine, to somebody that's looking for a wine to have on their table for pizza night on Tuesday.
How do you get the new generation, the people who are just getting into wine?
Well, it's really tough because you're competing with all different types of beverages. You're starting off with people that are at different points of life. So the new market, they're just looking for something to take with them, to go be with friends, to go have at the end of the day. They're not looking for complexity. They're looking for something cute to put on the table. You get the big labels, something that's fun and bright that everybody will enjoy. They're a little bit more nervous about making mistakes, but they're willing to try things that are new. You're trying to bring something that you don't know to the table, but we're competing against the ready-to-drink, the cans, the seltzers, the beers, because they're experimenting everything at the same time. So you're trying to educate about everything, not just the wine in itself, the grapes in itself, not just the region, but also food pairings. It's their first experience with Portugal and with a different product. That's the biggest part about exploring to new markets, is getting people to build the connection, not only with our product, but with the country in general. I would want to try this one because this is my favorite, and then we'll skip on some of the other reds. This one's my favorite.
And what is this?
This is the Foral de Évora. It's 100% Assario.
Assadio?
I have never.
Never heard that before. Assadio.
Yes. Assario. I like things that are different. I like things that you can't really explain. And this is one of those grapes. It's not similar to a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chardonnay. It has its own characteristics because it is a 100% native Portuguese grape.
Tastes very different.
But it's very fresh, it's very crisp. If I had to pick my favorite wine, this would be the one. The hardest part to get over are people that are afraid of trying things that they don't know. So we have to do a lot of education about the grape varieties. Say, if you like Sauvignon Blanc, try this. If you like Tempranillo, this is the same grape as Tempranillo. So it's a lot of education behind what we're doing. It's not as easy to sell as just a French wine. Everybody says, ooh, it's French, it must be great. Portuguese is like, it's Portuguese. It is great, but you have to kind of give them the story of why it's great.
Well, that's a great thought to end this episode. Wine translation, matching international grapes you might like to something similar in Portuguese.
And it's worth the effort. We're already finding some really amazing Alentejo wines. Next time we'll hear how Portugal's biggest producer is cleverly weaving this region's story into its brands.
It starts with a small gathering at the height of World War II and follows some axe-wielding men into the cork forests.
Thanks for listening. Do spread the word. Check out our website by searching for the Big Portuguese Wine Adventure. We'll see you next time.